India, the emerging power in defense manufacturing, empowering our armed forces in the high mountains, fighting battles in the harsh terrain of deserts, and securing India's vast coastline. The Indian defense industry is marching ahead with strength and power, continuously engraving the success story of Make in India. A well-developed ecosystem has created indigenous capabilities in naval systems, aero systems, missile, electronics and land systems, keeping pace with the global trends in war-fighting technologies. Greater emphasis on self-reliance, increased participation of the Indian industry with startups, MSMEs, ordnance factories and PSUs as partners. A robust defense and aerospace industry base has been created by simplification of procedures, new policy for indigenization, innovations for defense excellence, offering government test facilities and proof ranges to industry, dedicated team to facilitate the private industry, encouraging intellectual property culture in defense corridors in Uttar Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, reforms in offset policy. Such initiatives have strengthened the ecosystem and defense manufacturing base of the country, resulting in growing investments, production and exports. And the journey of excellence continues. After the remarkable success of DefExpo 18, Ministry of Defense is ready to showcase the digital transformation of defense at Lucknow, a vibrant manufacturing hub of Uttar Pradesh, focusing on innovation and emerging technologies, bringing in a paradigm shift from conventional to futuristic technologies. A show of India's renewed and strengthened defense and aerospace industry, showing alongside the experience of global defense manufacturers. Come, experience the power of growth and commitment. DefExpo 2020. Explore the world of opportunities.
Hello, good afternoon, namaste. A very warm welcome to all our participants to the 5th webinar for Defense Expo 2020. My name is Bhumika and I welcome you all on behalf of NEGD Digital India LMS team. These webinars are a collaborative effort of Department of Defense Production, Ministry of Defense, NEGD Digital India, Ministry of Electronics and IT. As India is emerging as a defense manufacturing hub, this edition of Defense Expo is focused on digital transformation in aerospace and defense sector. DefExpo 2020 will bring the leading technologies in the defense sector under one roof and provide a myriad of opportunities for government, private sectors, and startups. The event is scheduled from 5th to 8th February at Lucknow, India. Those who have been with us in our journey, they have already heard a lot from our eminent speakers. In case you are joining us for the first time, I welcome you all and would request you to stay connected for our future webinars as well. For today, it is my pleasure to welcome Shri Baba Kalyani. He is the Chairman and Managing Director of Bharat Forge Limited. He was conferred the honor of Padma Bhushan in 2008 and is joining us from Pune. Also, he would be speaking on the topic, India, the Emerging Defense Manufacturing Hub. Also joining us is Captain Nagesh Jain from Department of Defense Production from NEGD Studios here at Delhi. He would give us an overview of the webinar speaker and topic for today. Before I hand over, I will take you through certain housekeeping rules. As you see on my screen, this webinar would be conducted for approximately 1 hour and would conclude at around 4 p.m. Indian Standard Time. I would request all the panelists to switch off their microphones and cameras when not in use. There is a chat option for our viewers. In case you have any problems during the course of the webinar, please let us know through this chat option. There is a Q&A section wherein you can put in all your queries and questions regarding the webinar topic to our webinar speaker. The best question would be awarded. For last webinar, Mr. Yogesh Mishra from Jyoti Toolings and Press Components Private Limited has won. You will be notified soon for your award. There is a poll at the end. I would request all the participants to please rate us on the quality of the webinar at the end of the webinar. There is also live YouTube streaming happening on the Digital India Learning YouTube channel. I would request you to subscribe and share the link. We will be sharing it shortly among your friends and contacts for spreading awareness. With this, now I hand over to Captain Nagesh Jain to introduce our topic and the speaker for today. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Bhumika. Good afternoon, everybody. Baba Saheb Neelkant Kalyani is the Chairman and Managing Director of Bharat Forge Limited, the flagship company and leading engineering conglomerate of the $3 billion Kalyani Group. The Kalyani Group companies have joint ventures with global MNCs, including Meritor USA, Maxion Wheels Brazil, Elbit Systems and Rafael Advanced Defense Systems from Israel. He has also served as a director on board of Hitachi, AB SKF Sweden, and is a member of the International Advisory Committee of Robert Bosch. Mr. Kalyani joined BFL in 1972, when the company's annual turnover was a mere $1.3 million. His strong entrepreneurial drive, clubbed with the penchant for equipping best-in-class technology, has elevated the company to be recognized as a category leader in the global automotive and industrial landscape. With manufacturing facilities spread across India, USA, Germany, Sweden, and France, the company has a global workforce of over 10,000 employees and has a consolidated turnover of about $1.4 billion today. BFL is today widely acknowledged as the #1 forging company in the world, with the largest repository of metallurgical knowledge and capability to supply sophisticated, high-technology components to almost every leading OEM across automotive, oil and gas, railways, marine, mining, and aerospace sectors. As India's largest exporter of automotive components, BFL has been at the forefront in promoting the Made in India brand globally. Every second truck plying in North America has a BFL component etched with Made in India. Mr. Kalyani has been appointed as a permanent member in the Prime Minister's Science, Technology and Innovation Advisory Council with effect from August 2018. He is the founding president of Society of Indian Defence Manufacturers and the chairman CII, National Committee for Defence, since 2013. Acknowledging his contributions to promote India's trade at the global level, the Prime Minister of India nominated Baba Kalyani as the co-chairman of the India-Japan Business Leaders Forum in the year 2013, and also as the co-chairman of the India-Sweden Business Leaders Roundtable in the year 2016. Mr. Kalyani's significant contributions to industry and the community have been recognized through various prestigious awards that he has received. Notable among them are Padma Bhushan, the highest civilian award in India, conferred upon him by the Honorable President of India. Order of the Rising Sun, Gold and Silver Star, Japan. Cross of the Order of Merit, Germany. Commander First Class of the Royal Order of the Polar Star, Sweden. Knight in the Order of the Legion of Honor, France. Doctor of Science by IIT Kharagpur, and Doctor of Science by Deakin University, Australia. Mr. Kalyani pursued BE Honours in Mechanical Engineering from Birla Institute of Technology and Sciences, Pilani, and thereafter graduated with a Master of Science from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Boston, in the year 1972. Mr. Kalyani is the founder chairman of the Pratham Puna Education Foundation, an NGO that is engaged in providing primary education to children belonging to the underprivileged sections of the local community. Since its inception in 2000, Pratham Pune has made a difference in the life of over 150,000 children in Pune. Now I hand you over to Baba Kalyani, who's joining us from Pune. Over to you, sir.
Well, thank you, Nagesh, Captain Nagesh. Thank you for this very elaborate introduction. I very much appreciate that. And good afternoon to all of you. I think we are at a very important juncture in our country as far as manufacturing is concerned, and especially manufacturing for the defense sector is concerned. And therefore, today's title, The Emerging Defense Manufacturing Hub, is extremely appropriate. Now, let me just elaborate a little bit in terms of my thoughts about the whole idea of how India will create defense manufacturing capability that is not only world-class, but in many sectors of this capability create industries, institutions, companies, both in the private and public sector, that will be large exporters of these products throughout the world. First of all, I think we all know that the Honorable Prime Minister has set a very ambitious goal of achieving a GDP of $5 trillion for the country by 2025. And out of that, almost $1 trillion of GDP is earmarked for manufacturing. And this is extremely important because the large country such as ours, with 1.3 billion people, with a lot of young people coming in the job market, unless we expand manufacturing very dramatically from where it is today, we will not be able to create the jobs that are required to be created. So there are 3 or 4 sectors which are most appropriate in terms of strengthening our manufacturing base. And out of that, the most important one is defense, aerospace, and the space sector. We have a manufacturing sector today which is about 15 to 16% of our GDP. And roughly that is about close to $370, $380 billion. And to take it to $1 trillion by 2025, which is not a very long time, it's just 5 years, we really need to grow our manufacturing activities almost something like 3 times in 5 years. That requires tremendous acceleration in the rate of growth of manufacturing. And this acceleration can only come on products that we currently use and import, because that's where the demand is. To create new demand takes a much longer period of time, and therefore the focus of the government in the area of defense manufacturing, aerospace manufacturing, and the space sector is very, very appropriate. We have a fairly rapid developing defense sector now in India. Over the last 4 or 5 years, there has been a tremendous amount of policy changes that have taken place in the government, in the Ministry of Defense, starting with the Make in India program that started in December 2014. We have had a new initiative from the Ministry of Defense in terms of the DPP that came out in 2016. Then we have had liberalized licensing for the private sector to produce defense products, including arms, ammunition, platforms, etc. And now, last year we've had an announcement of the defense production policy, which is on the website of the Defense Ministry. And I think once that is implemented, that will give a clear direction to Indian industry in terms of what products are required and by what time, because that clearly spells out what products will be produced only in India by what time. And that time frame is somewhere from 2022 onwards. So I think it's important to have the defense production policy in place. And I hope to hear some announcements on this during the defense show, expo at Lucknow in the next month. The FDI in defense is increasing at a rapid rate. Many companies around the world are showing a lot of interest in terms of participating in India's defense manufacturing capability that we want to create. So that's an encouraging sign. We have had a fairly strong target within the MOD itself of creating a $26 billion defense industry by 2025. And my own gut feel is that this is easily doable. And not only is this doable, once we get to this level of defense production within the country, the amount of export opportunities that we will get around our neighborhood alone, whether it's Southeast Asia, whether it's the Middle East, or whether it's even in some advanced countries, could be quite enormous, because two things we must remember. India has a large repository of technical people, whether it's engineers, whether it's graduates coming out of our institutes of higher learning. And India also has a tremendous competitive capability in manufacturing. I mean, our own example that we today export the products all around the world, not only in the automotive sector, but also in the industrial sector, is a testimony to India's competitiveness. And there are many companies like us who do this within the country. And therefore, taking advantage of India's competitiveness in high technology manufacturing would be extremely advantageous for us in getting into the whole defense manufacturing sector as far as exports is concerned. A couple of things I'd like to state. First is, what are the supply side developments in terms of the strategic policy shifts that have taken place? I think, again, the Honorable Prime Minister has emphasized more than once that India should become self-reliant in defense aerospace and the need to develop a robust and strong defense manufacturing ecosystem in the country. As I said earlier, the Ministry of Defense has initiated several new policies, and I'm told that within a few weeks or months, you will get amendments to the DPP itself, and the defense production policy should be in place. We are beginning to see a renewed interest from industry. We now have something like 400 to 500 members of Indian industry in the Society of Indian Defense Manufacturers. And the good thing is there's a large number of these industries in the small and medium sector. And this is important from any industry, because this forms the major supply chain for any sector. And if we can create a supply chain for the defense sector, this will help us create a much larger defense industrial base in our country. A lot of good things are happening on the naval side. We have productions of ships, submarines, aircraft carriers that are going on. A lot of good things on the aircraft side. The Tejas has become now a reality, and I believe the Tejas light combat aircraft and its variants will become one of the mainstays of our Indian Air Force and manufacturing for the defense sector. We also have now the strategic partnership model that the Defense Ministry has announced, and I believe we should start seeing initiatives on the strategic partnership model taking place soon. The Defense Production Policy of 2018, which very clearly states the roadmap for defense sector going forward. I will give you some highlights of this roadmap. It has targeted a turnover of $26 billion in defense goods and services by 2025, attract additional investments to the tune of $10 billion of including FDI, create employment avenues for 2 to 3 million more people in this sector, to make India as a global leader in cyberspace and artificial intelligence based technologies, achieve self-reliance in 16 major weapon categories by 2025, and all these categories are listed in the policy which is on the website of MOD. Zero defect, zero effect, the ZED concept of manufacturing culture to be bought in amongst MSMEs, and technology perspective capability roadmap to be created, the TPCR. Now, the good thing is that indigenous capability exists in many different areas, in weapon systems. Many Indian companies have demonstrated their ability to manufacture products. Considerable investments have been made in the private sector in capability and capacity developments in the last 5 to 6 years. I'll give you some examples. Artillery guns, one example. Night fighting enablers, warships, land combat systems, etc. The announcement of defense industrial corridors, both in Uttar Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, is another strategic move to get industry, especially small and medium industry, in that area. And the government, through its initiatives in Digital India, Digital Army programs, and continued impetus to Industry 4.0, is creating an effective enabler for the armed forces to embrace the wave of digitalization. And I think that is the main theme of the expo that is going to take place in Lucknow this time. So you will see many Indian companies and of course foreign companies showcasing their capability in the area of digital technologies. Coming to the demand side interventions, our current CDS, the earlier Chief of Army Staff, General Rawat, I will just quote him. He had said a few months ago, we will win the next war through indigenized weapon systems. Now, there can be no greater emphasis on domestic production of weapons and weapon systems than the statement from the Army Chief and now the CDS who is there. While focusing on modernization and structure approach to meeting long-term integrated perspective plan, the LTIPP, the LTPP 2012-2027 is demand enough to command local manufacturing. The government needs to discourage imports and needs to put its weight behind the Indian industry to expeditiously design, develop, manufacture defense equipment and invest in this capability. And let me take a few moments to give you a little example of what happened in the United States during World War II. Not many people probably know this data. In 1940, Winston Churchill, then the Prime Minister of England, and the French government approached President Roosevelt for help in supplying military hardware as Germany had attacked England and France and other countries in Europe, and these countries were running out of their military hardware. Roosevelt, although had a lot of opposition from his Congress to getting involved in the war, agreed to supply military hardware. He called two executives from the private sector. One was the president of General Motors then. His name was Bill Knudsen. And second was private sector entrepreneur from California, whose name was Henry Kaiser. Henry Kaiser used to build ships, small ships in those days. And he called them to Washington and said, he just made a phone call and said, gentlemen, you need to come to Washington tomorrow. I have to discuss some production matters with you. That was his phone call. These two guys landed in Washington, and President Roosevelt laid out the plans of how these two people, along with bringing in more people from the private sector, will develop the US military industrial base, which is what we know today in terms of the United States superpower. And let me just give you some data in terms of what they produced in 4.5 years. This was from 1940 to 1944. They produced 324,000 fighter aircrafts, 324,000, 141 aircraft carriers, 8 battleships, 257,000 artillery pieces, artillery guns, 807 cruisers, destroyers and destroyer escorts, 88,400 tanks, 52 million tons of merchant ships, 200 submarines, 2.4 million trucks for the military, and 2.6 million machine guns and billions of ammunition rounds. Now, these numbers may sound astounding. They are astounding, there is no doubt. But every organization in the United States in those 4.5 years got involved in producing for the military, and not for the US Army alone. A large part of this was shipped across the Atlantic to England and France. And when Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill met in Tehran in 1943, towards the end of the war, Stalin raised his glass in a toast to American production, without which this war would have been lost. It was a stunning tribute from a leader of the world of communism to forces of American capitalism. And this is how America's industrial base was built in the 40s. And that's how America became a superpower. So, but the point of highlighting this simple fact of history is it doesn't take 20, 30 years to make this happen. You know, if you have a will, you can make this happen in a very short period of time. And today, I think with the leadership that you have in the Prime Minister, the leadership that's there in the services, we see this will, and the leadership in the Defense Ministry, we see this will. And there is tremendous amount of nationalism in people in the industry. They want to do something for India, whether it's a small company, big company, whether it's a private company or a public company, doesn't matter. They want to do something for the country. And I think we need to catalyze on this nationalistic spirit. We need to catalyze on our leadership and take this opportunity and make India into a superpower. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for so much information and such a knowledgeable talk. Now it is time for questions. I would request the team at Pune to help sir with some questions.
When will India become self-reliant in terms of its firearm requirements, and when will we start exporting to other nations? Well, as I said in my talk, I think we can make this happen pretty quickly. To be realistic, if we achieve the goal of $1 trillion manufacturing economy by 2025, and I think we will start making this happen by 2025. Next question is on the India industrial part. The business has been and will be at the same range, or will it be some of the new content or new segments where you can have significant amount of improvement going forward? I think business and industrial products and also military products are undergoing tremendous technology change. So I suspect that you will have a lot of new content and new segments as far as industry is concerned going forward. The next question, what are the compliance requirements for an Indian component manufacturer to export firearm components? Well, I think in terms of compliance, first, you have to comply to the Ministry of Defense and Indian government's green channel list in terms of what you can export and to which countries you can export. This is the first compliance required because you can't export anywhere and everywhere. There are restrictions in terms of export of arms and ammunition and defense technologies. As far as the country to which you are exporting, if it is a green channel country which is allowed by the government of India, then I think they will have their own compliance requirements in terms of product specification, in testing, etc. And I think it would depend on what you're exporting. Well, application of artificial intelligence and robotics, and I would take the larger definition of robotics in the sense of automation in the energy and defense sector. I don't think 5 years from now, anybody in any sector can do without artificial intelligence and knowledge of artificial intelligence. It is going to be all embracing. It is going to be applicable no matter which sector you are, whether you're in manufacturing, whether you're in services, whether you're in agriculture, whether you're in the financial sector, the fintech sector. I mean, this is going to be a all pervasive technology sweep that is taking place all around the world. As far as robotics or automation is concerned, I think this is something that improves productivity and efficiency of any product, equipment or service. And therefore, I think embracing that also becomes rather important. Well, every business has challenges. The defense sector has had tremendous challenges. First, in terms of policy. Second, in terms of trust. Third, in terms of ability of the whole ecosystem, and the ecosystem means the government, the MOD, the services, and the industry to come together to a common cause. I think we are beginning to overcome these challenges. There is a lot of things that have happened, as I said in my talk, in the last 5-6 years. And I am personally very optimistic that we are now on a path where we should start seeing active involvement of industry in creating a defense sector in India, in supplying to our services and exporting products out. On the economy, yes, we are in difficulty, no doubt, but I think we are beginning to see a lot of green shoots, and therefore I think the worst is behind us, and we should start seeing hopefully some growth coming in the next few quarters. Yeah, the question is, since the space industry is closely linked to the defense industry, would India encourage private aerospace companies and startups? I think India is already encouraging a lot of private aerospace industries and startups. There are lots of programs to encourage startups in the aerospace sector happening every couple of months. And I'm sure if you get in touch with the aerospace industry or the industry associations like CII or SIDM or FICCI, they will tell you about this. There is a MOD initiative called IDEX, Innovation for Defense Excellence, to foster innovation and technology development, operationalizing defense innovation organization and funds. And a 100 crore corpus has been created from founding members like HAL, BEL, exactly for this reason. So I think there's a lot of encouragement happening in this area. I think the challenges that need to be overcome in future for manufacturing companies is the challenge of overcoming the headwinds of major technological changes that are taking place. Manufacturing is not going to remain like it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 20 years ago. It's going to be very different. And the difference largely is going to come from application of digital manufacturing, application of Industry 4.0, and implementation of artificial intelligence in your system. And therefore, adapting to these new technologies becomes extremely important. And one of my advice to manufacturing companies would be, start this early, start the adaptation early. And the fastest way to start the adaptation is to start retraining and reskilling your people in the area of digital technologies. You don't need a special institute for skill development for defense and aerospace manufacturing. I don't think defense and aerospace manufacturing is going to be any different from manufacturing for any other sector. Everything, including an automobile, now requires highly sophisticated levels of manufacturing, has a lot of electronics in it. The latest cars even have LiDARs in them. So you need the same skill sets, whether you're making an automobile or you're making defense products or you're being part of an ecosystem in aircraft manufacturing. You need high technology, you need skilled manpower, you need good facilities, and you need to follow good systems. And I think that's the key to being good in the manufacturing sector. In terms of raw materials, a large part of raw materials are already available in India. And if they are not available, there is capability to make that happen. There are some materials that are not available in India, but that's as a percentage of the raw materials that are required in shipbuilding or aerospace, that's pretty small. It may be critical, but it's pretty small. And I don't think India aspires to make 100% of everything. So even if you have to import 5 or 10% of your raw materials, I don't think that's a problem. But I think to a large extent, most things are available. This is the real problem, this question. Why have we not seen many Indian companies developing critical technologies and are dependent on imports? This is the critical problem where our mindset, our trust deficits, our ecosystem in the past many years didn't develop to create this capability. But now in the past 5-6 years, the trust that the Honorable Prime Minister has given, the Honorable Defense Minister has given, the MOD has given, I think we are moving exactly in this direction. And many companies, including ours, we have developed our own technologies in critical areas. We have developed artillery guns on our own. We are developing many other critical products on our own. And I see many companies are beginning to do this. So I think if this approach goes on for the next couple of years, in 5 years' time, you will see, 50, 100 Indian companies having capability to make pretty sophisticated products. (3D metal printing), that's one of the new technologies in advanced manufacturing. It is inevitable that you will be involved with 3D metal printing, either using 3D metal printed components or using 3D metal printing to make products that you make. But it's not essential that everybody has to have 3D metal printing. You can have suppliers who can provide you with this kind of parts. I think we are now ending towards 45 minutes. Maybe we can take one more last question. So if anybody has any particular last question, I'll be happy to answer.
I think we have closed this Q&A session. Thank you, sir, for answering so many questions. I'm sure our audience is very happy and have gained a lot of knowledge. With this, I would remind my viewers, please rate us on the quality of the webinar, which is being flashed on your screen. The poll is being flashed on your screen. I also transfer now to Captain Nagesh for a few words before we conclude. Over to you, sir. Captain Nagesh, your mic is on mute.
Thank you, Bhumika. I take this opportunity to thank Baba Saheb Kalyani for the conduct of the webinar, where he has dwelt upon how India is on the cusp of emerging as the next defense manufacturing hub. This session was interactive and generated keen interest among all participants and dealt with all the facets which favor India, mainly entrepreneurship, skilled manpower, and conducive government policies. I also thank all participants for their active involvement, contribution, and insightful questions. There is an attractive prize for the best question asked by the participants, which will be selected by a panel and will be announced at the next webinar. The next webinar will be conducted by Mr. Jayant Singh, Senior Investment Specialist at Invest India, who will speak on the topic. DefExpo 2020, Investment Opportunities in the Defense Sector. This webinar will be held on 20th January at 3 p.m. Indian Standard Time or 9:30 a.m. GMT. Jai Hind and thank you. Over to you, Bhumika.
Thank you, Captain Nagesh. Just a little information for our viewers. Our webinar on 20th January has been rescheduled and it will be conducted on 30th January. You will be notified if you have already registered for this, or else the schedule on the website has been changed. I also remind my viewers that please log in and please subscribe yourself to the YouTube channel, Digital India Learning YouTube channel. This webinar and all other webinars are available there. With this, I will now give you a tour of the website, Defense Expo website. You see on my screen, there is a seminar section on the website main page. When you click on that, a webinar section opens. In the webinar section, you can go on the webinar links. When you click on the webinar links, all the information about the upcoming webinars is given here. You click on the link and register yourself. The schedule for this webinar would be changed for 20th. This webinar is on 30th now. The next webinar is on January 22nd. So you will be given all the information now. This one is the next. We have a next webinar on 30th January. Now, before I end, I want to take this opportunity to thank our leadership, without whom this initiative wouldn't have been possible. Dr. Ajay Kumar, Defense Secretary and Secretary, Defense Production. Sri Barun Mitra, Special Secretary, Defense Production. Dr. Amit Sahai, Joint Secretary, Personnel and Coordination. Mr. Abhishek Singh, President and Chief Executive Officer, National E-Governance Division. I express my gratitude for providing us this opportunity and giving us such an encouraging and supporting environment. I would also like to thank Captain Nagesh Jain, Brigadier K. Suresh Pillai, and Captain Roy Joseph from Department of Defense Production for providing us all the support. Last but not the least, I would like to thank NEGT Digital India LMS team for making this webinar a huge success. Do not forget to log in for our next webinar on 22nd January, 3 p.m. Indian Standard Time. The winner of the best question for this webinar would be announced on 22nd. With this, now we conclude for today. I hope you had an enjoyable session. Happy learning. Jai Hind.